Acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people and pay our respects to those past and present. Tonight we have with us Pastor Matthew Erikson from the First Reformed Church, who will lead us in our invocation. If we could all please stand.
Good evening. Let us pray. Gracious God, as we gather here this evening, we pause with gratitude. In this season of Thanksgiving, we give thanks for the gift of community. We thank you for the city that we call home, the people who live here, and those who serve it with diligence and care. We are grateful for the blessings that we often overlook, the beauty of our island, the safety and freedoms we enjoy, the friendships that sustain us, and the opportunities to work together for the common good. Grant us hearts that recognize these gifts and hands ready to share them. As this council conducts the work of the city tonight, we ask for wisdom that is humble, insight that is fair, and decisions that will strengthen the well-being of all who reside in Oak Harbor. Where there may be division, cultivate understanding. Where there is need, inspire compassion. Where there is possibility, encourage collaboration. May gratitude guide our attitudes, our words, and our actions tonight and in the days ahead. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are all present and accounted for, so there's no need for roll call. At this time, the council will move into executive session per revised code of Washington 4231.10.1c to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of decreased price. The anticipated duration of the executive session is 15 minutes. Action may or may not be taken upon return to the open session of the meeting. Executive sessions are not open to the public.
The council has announced that they will extend their executive session for an additional 10 minutes to 5:58 p.m. The council has announced that they will extend the executive session for an additional 5 minutes to 6:03 p.m.
All right, we are back. Council has come out of executive session. No action will be taken at this time regarding the matter discussed. We are going to move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any suggested changes to the regular agenda as presented? Hearing none, we will, it's approved as presented. We'll move on to public comments. Comments on the consent agenda items or subjects of interest not listed on the agenda at this time will be taken. You'll have an opportunity to comment on the remaining agenda items during the meeting as appropriate as we discuss those items. Comments on public hearing items are heard during that portion of the agenda as well. You may visit our website for methods to submit public comments. Public comments sent anonymously or from a non-verifiable address will be shared with the mayor and council but will not be displayed. Comments sent in by folks that will be displayed tonight. If you're here in attendance, we will not also be hearing from you in person. We're either going to display your comment or take your comments from you in person, but we're only going to hear them one time. So with that, Julie, we received a number of public comments this week, and those are being displayed for you on the screen. Thank you. It's not the intent anyway. To take them away, it's not the intent. Dear God. All right, at this time, we will accept,
Mayor, I'm sorry, we still have comments.
oh, my bad, sorry. All right, now at this time, we will accept public comments on items not listed on the agenda or on the consent agenda. Julie, the clerk, will call your name in the order in which you signed in to speak. Please step forward to the microphone and state your name and address. Limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Mayor, the first two persons who signed in to speak had submitted public comment that has been displayed this evening.
Okay,
They were both in regards to Sumner Park.
great, thank
So
you.
we will move on. The next speaker who signed in is Rusty Gagnon.
Rusty, if you could please step forward to the microphone, state your name, address, and limit your public comment to 3 minutes, please.
Well, I was instructed to sign in, although you've got me further on down under your appointment, so I guess maybe we'll shorten it up a little bit.
Okay.
My name is Rusty Gagnon. It's Gagnon. It's pronounced like canyon with a G, not Gagnon, which is a very choking sensation. I applied to the Civil Service Commission position because I have a 27-year career in law enforcement and corrections. I'm told that you have my application in your packet, so I'll try not to repeat too much. I will say that I started in Sacramento County as a sheriff's dispatcher and a reserve deputy, and was subsequently promoted to a welfare fraud investigator. After that, I became a district administrator for the California Attorney General's office with responsibilities for San Bernardino County, Orange County, and half of LA County. I didn't spend much time in the office. I specialized in developing and administering programs to intervene and prevent child abuse and domestic violence. And I received some commendations for that work, and I think it was probably the best part of my career. Eventually, I ended up with the California Department of Corrections, and I ended up finding $5 million of federal money that nobody had ever found before to buy new buses and transportation systems. So maybe if we need to look for some more money, I might help you out a little bit there. Because we're always looking for money, but it's always there. You just have to know which rock to turn over. From there, I became the correctional business manager for a maximum security men's prison, Salinas Valley State Prison, 4,200 of the most charming, not individuals. And became before the warden retired, he promoted me to a correctional counselor 2, which is like a JAG officer for inmate grievances and complaints. I never had an empty inbox. From there, I promoted to California Parole Agent 2 Specialist and relocated to San Diego. And I spent my last 6 or 7 years there with some interesting individuals. I didn't used to believe in parole. I learned to think otherwise. And for the most part, I found a lot of people who probably never should have gone to prison in the first place. There should have been a different alternative. My biggest thing that I did learn is the vast majority of people in prison never completed high school, never completed middle school, don't have any marketable skills, so they end up doing what they do, which sends them to prison, which doesn't usually make them any better. I'd like to make a lot of recommendations, but most people don't want to hear what I recommend. I'm looking forward to this position. I have been at the public hearings for the last 2 months. I've met Sandy, I've met the 2 chiefs. I'm actually looking forward to this. It's sort of like getting back in the saddle. I'd be interested to answer any of your questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'll shut up.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and also thank you for volunteering to be a part of this commission, and they will be voting to accept you into that commission tonight. So thank you very much.
I hope not to disappoint you.
All right. Is there anyone else?
Mayor, the other 2 persons who signed up to speak are related to agenda items.
Okay, perfect. So is there anybody that didn't have an opportunity to sign in or that would like to step forward and speak to an item that's not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, seeing none, I will close public comment and move on to consent agenda. Are there any objections or changes to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve. Yes, Councilmember Morrow.
I move we accept the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
We have a motion as presented by Councilmember Morrow, seconded by Councilmember Wiggenstein. Is there any further discussion before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. You're in, Rusty. Congratulations. All right, so we are going to move on to Mayor's comments. City staff have created a community resource page. It includes housing, food, and other resources for those in need of additional support during these times. There's been a huge outpouring and cry for assistance from our local food bank. So we are just doing whatever we can as a city to help promote those in need this holiday season and this time of year. Staff and council members attended the Veterans Day program and parade last week. Thank you very much for that. City administrator was out and about speaking at various partner meetings, school district, the Military Officers Association, with Councilmember Stuckey, and took my place and did an amazing job at the Rotary meeting last week. So thank you very much for doing that, Sabrina. Congratulations to the new Mr. Oak Harbor Court. The court is displayed here. Remember that this is how we got Nolan brought to us. If you are planning a city event, make sure to attend the public meeting this Thursday at 5:30 p.m. at the Collective. Our communications officer is spearheading this with the Main Street Association and the Chamber of Commerce. The Wright Blend this month has been postponed until after the holidays. We are still taking applications for advisory boards and commissions, and please continue to follow us on social media and stay connected. I do have one more big announcement that I'm very proud of. Tonight we held our closing or our exit conference with the Washington State Auditor's Office, And through the course of getting a very glowing review and that report from the Washington State Auditor's Office, we were also informed that we will be receiving the Washington State Auditor Stewardship Award. It is given to government agencies that demonstrate a strong commitment to accountability, transparency, and fiscal responsibility. Recipients are nominated by their audit teams and are recognized for their excellent audit records, proactive handling of audit recommendations, and diligent stewardship of public funds. The key aspects of the award are the purpose is to recognize exceptional performance in government accountability and transparency, exemplary fiscal responsibility, consistently clean audits, and strong stewardship of public resources. Government entities are nominated by the State Auditor's Office audit teams, and recipients are recognized for their commitment to the audit process, including transparency, and for their proactive approach to implementing recommendations. The Washington State Auditor herself will be here next month to present this award. We are one of 4 cities in the entire state to receive this award this year. So it's a really big deal, and a big congratulations to really all of our city staff, and especially our finance department, who's done an incredible job. So that concludes my comments, and with that, I will turn it over to City Council for their comments at this time. Councilmember Arms.
Yeah, I had the opportunity this Sunday to go to the town hall meeting with Clyde Shavers, which was very informative, and it was nice to see him and see what he's doing. So I was able to see Clyde for a change.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Arms. Anybody else for the good of the order? Anyone want to report? Yes, Councilmember Stuckey, thank you.
Would it be possible to, can I just checked to make sure I was accurate in this, on the website where you can provide public comment, can we put somewhere on their language that your public comment will be in person or online? Yeah,
I just asked our staff to do that to make sure that it was
I mean, I do feel bad for
Same
people who
thought.
didn't legitimately know it.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going to have that rule, it just needs to be on the
Yeah,
website.
thank you for that.
Yeah,
That's all.
absolutely, I agree with you, and we can definitely make that change. And again, it's all in the spirit of trying to save us all time this evening, so, yeah. Anything else? Nobody has any reports or anything on your committees that you would like to report out on? All right, I'm going to start calling on you all individually. We're going to move on to public hearings and meetings then, and the first up is ordinance number 2032, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Code, Chapter 3.98, Local Business and Occupation Tax. And here to introduce that topic is our Deputy City Administrator, Finance Director, Mr. David Goldman.
Yeah. Okay, it's time for everybody's favorite topic, the local business and occupation tax. So this is resolution 2520. What? This is not the right presentation. No. No, we need the B&O, the BO, man.
Wrong tax, Tim.
He's just ready to kick you guys off.
Poor Circe's been sitting in those uncomfortable chairs. I'm trying to get her out of here.
Okay, I knew it was an ordinance. So, ordinance 2032, this is an update to the local business and occupation tax. So, per that RCW state law thing, any city that adopts a local business and occupation tax must also adopt the mandatory provisions of the model local business and occupation ordinance. A city workshop of city finance directors and tax managers met over the summer, we were not invited, to review changes needed to the B&O model ordinance in response to Senate Bill 5814, which changed the definitions of certain activities from services to sales. The B&O, any city, and there's 53 now, that has a local B&O tax must adopt these mandatory provisions of the model ordinance with the same effective date, which is January 1st, 2026. So, Senate Bill 5814 changed the tax classifications of the following services to retail sales. They're listed all there. And in the ordinance, which is in your package, you'll see a lot of underlines and crossouts and little technical changes per the to follow along with this change in state law. In case you're curious, the following is a non-exhaustive list of what is considered a live presentation. So a live presentation is now considered a retail service, so it has a different tax definition now, and there's some definitions of what that means. And there's other updates too. We wanted to clarify in the local B&O ordinance that we have that the first $4 million per year or the first $1 million per quarter of gross receipts is deductible from the total gross receipts. And we also want to reaffirm that any deductions taken cannot exceed the total amount of gross receipts. So someone doesn't get a negative number, or try to say we owe them money, So anyway, those are all the changes, all pretty much technical changes, and here's a suggested motion for you and the public hearing time.
All right, thanks, David. So at this time, I will open the public hearing, and I will confirm with our city clerk that we have not received any public comment on this issue.
That's correct, Mayor. No public comments were received.
All right, and is there anyone with us this evening that would like to step forward and make public comment on this issue? Hearing, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and call upon council for their questions and comments. Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. And so noted, David, I'd make sure I'd invite you. I wouldn't want you to be mad about that, so. Just not to put you on the spot, but I assume you've probably already, anticipated this question. Does this bring any new businesses into our matrix that weren't there during all of the discussions?
No, this just is all technical, it doesn't bring any new businesses, but if there's 7 categories of activities, so maybe there was something that they would have put on the services row in the tax return, now they'll put it on the retail sales row. That's pretty much.
Well, you get what I'm coming to. There was X amount of businesses that were affected when we added this B&O tax. Is there a new group of businesses that are going to roll into that didn't have any input when we were doing, this is all fresh, right? So. Yeah, this change is just to adhere to, the Senate Bill 5814 and also to make sure we're clear about the deductibility of the threshold. So. Well, the reality is we don't have any choice in it, right? But I just, wanted to make sure if there were new businesses that those were going to be drawn into it, that we at least did the courtesy of reaching out to them and let them know that because of the state law that now they're and additional businesses that'll be affected by the previous action we took. I'd like to move to approve ordinance 2032 amending chapter 3.98 pertaining to updating the Oak Harbor local business and occupation tax.
All right, we have a motion as presented by Councilmember Wiesner, seconded by Councilmember Romero. Before I call for a vote, is there any further discussion on this issue? All right, hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously, thank you very much. We are going to move forward with the approval of accounts payable vouchers. Chamber of Commerce. This voucher list contains a payment or payments to the Greater Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce, of which Councilmember Marshall is the executive director. In order to avoid a conflict of interest, Councilmember Marshall has stated he will recuse himself from a vote on such payments, which are now a separate agenda item. Have we received any public comment on this issue?
No, Mayor, no public comments were received.
All right, and is there anyone here with us this evening that would like to step forward and make comment on this issue at this time? All right, hearing none. Council, questions and concerns. Do you all have any questions or concerns? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the accounts payable vouchers as presented by Councilmember Wiesner, seconded by Councilmember Wittgenstein. Is there any further discussion before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right, and we have 6 yes and 1 abstention, so. All right, we're going to move forward to ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance number 2031, adopting Oak Harbor Municipal Code, Chapter 6.25, related to chronic nuisances. And here to introduce this is the wonderful Miss Hillary Evans.
Good evening, everyone. I am coming to you direct from halfway through a trial that I am conducting for the city of Sammamish in King County in lovely Kent. So it is very nice to be here tonight and talk about this ordinance as a lovely change of pace. I hope everyone is doing very well. We have discussed this ordinance previously. This is an ordinance that the mayor has asked me to draft because he knows that I have used a chronic nuisance ordinance in several other cities that I represent previously. A chronic nuisance ordinance is different from a regular nuisance ordinance in a lot of really important ways. And the use of the word chronic nuisance, I think, does create a lot of confusion for people. But effectively, what a chronic nuisance ordinance does is it identifies properties on or around which there are a lot of law violations. So domestic violence, drug use, warrant pickups, not junk vehicles like you'd think of when you typically think of a nuisance. We're talking about actual law violations. And for properties on which, or very close to which, from which essentially are the home of these law violations, it allows your police department to identify those properties, to provide them with a warning saying your property has been identified as potentially a chronic nuisance property. You've had these law violations in this many months, and offer them a warning and an opportunity to work with the city to abate those nuisances. Abatement can come in any form. This ordinance is very, very open because there are so many different types of problems that the city may find. That leniency allows for some creativity in the solutions. Is it floodlights? Is it security? Is it a fence? So the police can work with the property owner or the person in charge of the property to come up with a voluntary correction agreement. Should the person in charge or the property owner fail to respond to this warning, this ordinance will give the city and the police and your city attorney the tools to go in and abate those nuisances. And to do that, we wouldn't just summarily go onto the property and erect a fence. Your city attorney would file a lawsuit in civil court and superior court, and we would ask the judge to allow us to do one of many things, including close the property to protect the community. It's an effective tool. It is a very rarely used tool. I've only actually ever filed in a lot of my cities have a similar ordinance, and I've only ever filed 3 or 4 of these lawsuits in my many years of practice, because frequently once that property has been identified as a chronic nuisance and the police get involved, you can find a cooperative landowner, property owner, landlord, property manager. So it's a good tool. It can be used as a last resort for those properties that are highly problematic and from which arise a lot of criminal activity. So I find it to be a very effective tool. I think it's a good solution, if a rarely used one, and it'll just be another tool in the toolbox of the city. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Hillary, for that presentation. First, I will confirm whether public comments have been received on this issue.
No, Mayor, no public comments were received.
Thank you, Julie. Is there anyone here with us this evening that would like to step forward and make public comment on this issue? Yes, please step forward. You want? Oh.
Yes, Mr. Ward is on the list to speak this evening.
Okay. So state your name, address, and then please limit your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff Ward, 891 Southeast Jensen Street, just a rock's throw over there. I was here for the workshop, and I would like to say thank you for the great discussion on the workshop and the discussion about other cities that have around here. A couple things occurred to me during that this, having this ordinance now up for a vote, I thought were important to point out. The first was, we have chronically not mentioned Spin Cafe in the workshop and here, but just in the comments about fences and the workshop where it was around the soda ordinance discussion as well, it seems pretty obvious this is very specifically crafted around there. And I'm a big fan of being open about why we're building ordinances and being open about what we intend to do with them. And it just seems like that has a bit of not a transparent feel to it. So I thought I would mention that my feeling is that we should be honest about why we're looking at these things. The other thing I would like to say is I believe in data-driven policy. And I would love to hear a discussion about how an ordinance like this has crafted specific issues and the specific issues we're looking to address with that ordinance, since it is an ordinance that potentially deeply impacts business or businesses and individuals around it. It'd be nice to hear real data-driven numbers about the true impact and the true uses. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate the discussion around this.
Great. Thank you very much for your comment. Is there anybody else that would like to step forward and make public comment at this time? All right, hearing none, I will close public comment and open it up to council members for their comments. Yes, Councilmember Merrill.
It probably comes as no surprise that I broadly support this type of action. I was going to request, if it's appropriate anyway, that the police chief might address the question with regard to specific areas and how it's really a part of a broader approach to controlling nuisances and even criminal activity. Would you be willing to speak to that?
Yeah.
You spoke to me about it, and it was very excellent, actually.
So good afternoon or good evening, Mayor, Council, Chief Slowick. So this ordinance specifically is not intended for one specific business or location. As discussed at the workshop, there are several incidents over the years where the city did not have any mechanism to work with property owners or close locations, specifically vacant houses where people were breaking into the location and the property owner was not available, or some drug locations. There's a massage parlor that was having inappropriate activity that we weren't able to get, so we'd receive a lot of complaints on, but we weren't able to make solid arrests on. So those are the type of locations that potentially could be used with this. In a couple of those instances, we did have to rely on our health department, our county health department. However, they have their own challenges that they face, and if they don't believe that it's a health violation, that might not be a mechanism that we have. So this does provide us other courses, just like Hillary said, just more tools in our toolbox on how we can look at working with property owners and landlords in our community to make sure that we provide safe locations for our public.
So to piggyback on what Chief is saying too, for me specifically, because I am the one that has been driving to bring this forward, and I worked with Hillary on this, or had many conversations with her about this. For me, this is more about us being proactive in our policing rather than reactive. We have not had anything within our code or our authority that allowed our police department to be proactive in what they were doing and making those things enforceable. This allows them to do that, and we need to hold people accountable. And it isn't just at Spend Cafe. There are other areas of the city where we're having issues too. So, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. At the appropriate time, I'd be pleased to make the motion.
Sure, Councilmember Wiesner also has a comment, so.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, we currently have a house in the northeast section of town that's been a chronic nuisance. Unfortunately, it's owned by the federal government, and we've been fighting that for, a year or more, and about all we can do is go over there and keep putting the boards back up on the building, and we're mowing the yard, and picture being a neighbor on each side of that. That has been living there now. It's been going on for, a year and a half, I think?
It has, and that property was tagged because of the health department. We were eventually able to get the health department in there and condemn that property, so.
Yeah, so just imagine being that neighbor. It's a tight neighborhood. You're 10 feet away from the neighboring houses, so, certainly not specific. I know of various other places that we haven't given you the tools, and it just is another tool in the toolbox. Doesn't mean we're going to be breaking it out every day. Just because you have a hammer in your toolbox doesn't mean you use it every day. So I'm all for providing the tools, and I will point out that Unfortunately, this tool, like many others, we're going to be relying upon the Superior Court in the state of Washington to take action if it ever got to that point, because that's ultimately what happens, right? It gives us the ability to take it to Superior Court and have the Superior Court rule or provide us with some sort of, avenue of relief. So, there you have it. It's not like it's a big hammer. It's just probably a little hammer in our tool bag, so.
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Anybody else? Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
Normally I'm used to nice little slides that give the highlight summary, and this one we just got the document, so, which is all right, but I read the document a couple times now, and one thing that I found was interesting in a good way is law enforcement response generated by calls for service to aid victims of the property shall not be counted as nuisance. So if there was a drug overdose on, say, one of my properties, and I call law enforcement because this person's in distress, that's not counting against me. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So for example, one thing that right now, the state law, any overdose type of thing, and you call for aid for somebody, we don't arrest the person that called for aid. There is a difference between somebody facilitating or allowing problems to occur on their property that are brought to the attention of the property owner, and they don't do anything about it. That, I think there's a challenge there, and I think that you have to look at the totality of what is the circumstance and what's going on. So I think each situation's different, but you're right. Just because law enforcement's called to a property, that does not mean, or requested to provide a service, that doesn't mean that triggers this ordinance at all.
So in this process, it sounds like even though there are fairly well-defined items in here, you do have some discretion. Does that sound accurate?
Certainly, and I think the key is that we work with our city attorney on what we feel is something that is a chronic nuisance and what that would be, and then working with those property owners.
And my last question is for Hillary, just because it was brought up. As I understand, this is not targeting one property. It is a tool in the toolbox, but that one property was mentioned, Spin Cafe. Owning the business right next to that property, is there any reason why I need to abstain from voting?
No, I don't think so, unless you feel uncomfortable doing so. I don't know, I personally don't know if the police department has their eye on utilizing this with regard to Spin Cafe, but certainly the action that the council is being asked to take tonight is not relevant to any particular property. So I think you can act in your role as a council member to adopt the law. The law will be applied equally to everyone. But again, if you feel uncomfortable for any reason, feel free to abstain.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'm just honing on this is broad. I mean, it'd be like me saying I'm not going to vote on a utility tax increase because I pay utility tax, As long as it's broad and it's even to everybody, not targeting one specific property. That's what I was trying to hear. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Anybody else? All right, hearing no additional comments, I would entertain a motion. Yes, Councilmember Romero.
I strongly move to approve ordinance number 2031, adopting Oak Harbor Municipal Code Chapter 6.25 related to chronic nuisances.
Okay, we have a motion as presented. Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there any further discussion before I call for a vote? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we are moving on to Resolution 2525, accepting recommendations of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for the funding of 2025 multi-year and single-year lodging tax tourism promotion grant awards. And here to introduce that topic tonight is our infamous grants administrator, Wendy Horn.
I hope I'm not infamous. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here to discuss the 2026 Lodging Tax Grant Award recommendation by the LTAC. Just as a reminder, per RCW 6728, the use of lodging tax revenues can be used for tourism promotion, tourism marketing, marketing and operations of special events and festivals, operations and capital expenditures of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by a municipality, and operations of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by a nonprofit. So last year, the council had asked for more guidance regarding LTAC awards. And just to refresh your memory, the council is not required to fund the full list of recommendations that will be presented to you. The council has the discretion to fund a partial list or change the amount of any of the award recommendations. However, the council cannot award funds to a recipient that's not on the LTAC list. So if you would like to award a different amount to any of the organizations, the proposed change or changes need to be resubmitted to the LTAC for review and comment for an additional 45-day period. So following any action today, after that 45-day period, the council can then take action on the revised amounts. Back in August, the council approved a total of $475,000 for 2026 grant awards. That amount includes $50,000 for the Whidbey and Camino Island tourism and $17,000 for Chalk Fest for their one-year extension. So with those amounts taken out, there was $408,000 to distribute among organizations. Applications were accepted in September, and in October, the LTAC met twice to discuss and determine their recommendations to council. I do want to note here, it's not on the slide, but Parks and Recreation did let me know yesterday, I believe, that they will not be pursuing Chalk Fest for the foreseeable future for a variety of reasons. So that $17,000 that you approved for that could be reallocated or just go back to the fund balance. It's your choice. Also wanted to point out that back in August, the council approved requesting $55,000 from the lodging tax grant program to assist in paying for the debt service on the marina dredging and breakwater project. Deputy City Administrator and Finance Director Goldman noted that if the full $55,000 is not approved for the marina, the finance staff will bring forward a slight increase to the utility tax before the end of 2025, as noted on the slide. So with that, this is the recommendation by the LTAC. There were a total of 21 applications. 15 of the 21 were selected for funding. All of the applications are in your packet, along with the final scoring sheet. The total requests were almost $800,000, so they had a tough decision this year to get it down to $400,000. But by unanimous vote, the Lodging Tax Committee recommended these amounts. And that is all I have. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Wendy, for your presentation. I will first confirm whether or not we received any public comment.
We did not receive public comments, Mayor. We do have one person that signed up to speak this evening.
Sounds good.
That is Cheryl Graham.
Cheryl, if you could please step forward, state your name, address, and limit your comment to 3 minutes. 3 minutes, please, minutes.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Graham. I live at 2210 Corsair Lane in Oak Harbor. I just wanted to say thank you for council members and the LTAC for all your hard work and providing us with the opportunity to apply for this amount of money. I just wanted to say I'm here on the behalf of Oak Harbor Main Street Association, and I just wanted to let you guys know a little bit more. I know you guys know, but just keep it on the top of your heads that Oak Harbor Main Street is the primary advocate for the heart of our city being downtown, historic downtown. We are on the ground and we're beating the streets. We support the property owners by supporting the business owners and by improving the district so people, event producers want to have their events downtown and mainly for people, visitors wanting a place to go. And so we've done that in several different ways, and we are continuing to do that so that our historic downtown is something that everybody can be proud of. We also have a restroom for people downtown to use. It's kind of like a pseudo public restroom. We don't advertise it because we don't want it trashed, in other words. But the nearest public restroom is down in Flintstone Park, and although it's only a block away, some people just think it's too far because it's downhill and then uphill, and if you have kids, blah, blah, blah. So, we're right down there in the heart that provides a bathroom. Also, expenses are rising and our donations are decreasing. I'm sure it's being felt through all the nonprofits here, and that's probably why they're so important to get this funding. I just wanted to share the importance of Main Street getting a piece of the pie, because we want everybody, all the events to succeed, especially the ones downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Is there anybody else that has signed up? Nope.
No, Mayor, no other people signed up to speak this evening.
Okay, great. And is there anybody else with us this evening that would like to step forward and make comments on this issue? Step forward, state your name, address, and limit your comment to 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Peterson. I reside at 964 Northwest Longview Drive in Oak Harbor. When I looked at the LTAC the other night, I was a little distressed to see that the board had decided not to fund the Oak Harbor Music Festival to the entire $50,000 that they had asked for. And I am delighted to hear that you now have money because the Chalk Festival can be off the board. And I would encourage you to take part of that money and give the Oak Harbor Music Festival the $50,000 they asked for, because they bring it to our city every year in a big way. And I think we should do that for them. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. All right, is there anybody else that is with us this evening that would like to step forward and make public comment at this time? Step forward, state your name, address, and your comment. Limit it to 3 minutes, please.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Mason, and I am the president of the Oak Harbor Music Festival, and I too would like to thank everybody involved with this process. It's very difficult. It's very competitive. I had written an email to our council and to the mayor with some thoughts after watching a meeting back in September with comments made about, well, we could give away scholarships, or we don't have a main source of income. We work really hard to raise money to keep this festival free for our community, and it's successful because of the volunteer base that shows up that has such pride in it. And I just want to say how humbling it is to see them give their time and energy, as well as this board that I work with that's incredible, to keep it free and be responsible fiscally to the monies that we bring in by way of LTAC and business donations and sponsorship. But we also give back to the community a lot, and I think that's important. So in looking at the list of applicants, I hope that that is also a consideration. I do believe that the commission made the decision not to award for-profit companies versus nonprofit. There's always comments to be made on how scoring is done and who's scoring, but I also think it's a little bit, I don't want to say unfair, but those that sit on that board or commission that represent one of these entities give up their time. And I learned that for example, Margaret's wearing the music festival hat this year. She could not score my application as it was submitted, so that dropped my score in comparison to the others, nor could she vote for that application. So I think at one point they used to take away the top and the bottom scores. I mean, there's all kinds of ways of going around this, but I think it's wonderful Margaret gives up her time as a board member, as well as the other recipients too. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cynthia. Anybody else here with us this evening that would like to step forward and make comment on this issue? All right, hearing none, I'm going to turn it over to council for their questions and comments at this time. Councilmember Arms, you may go.
I know that everybody worked really hard, and everybody has a need. And I know it's the first year for the marina, and since we have that 17,000, I think as a council, we need to decide what are we going to do with that extra revenue that we have in there. You know, are we going to give it to one, or are we going to jockey it and do to a couple? I don't think we should just leave it as is. It is there for us because the Chalk Fest isn't there, and we didn't know that. And I think it's something, you know, we can decide just leave it as is, or we can decide to disperse it. You know, we have three things that we can think about: the marina, the music fest downtown. We can divide it, or, you know, send it back to LTAC and have them make a decision. I just think that, you know, since it's there, then we could use the revenue.
Thank you, Councilmember Arms. Is there anybody else? Yes, Councilmember Wiesner.
I guess I have a couple thoughts on that, and thanks for your comments, Barbara. In years past, and again, I think we all learn more and more about LTAC as we get experience, you know, in LTAC and understanding it. For the longest time, we thought, for example, if we didn't prove the whole list exactly as written, the whole list had to go back. And we figured out that wasn't the case. We've also figured out it's not the case that we can't open up LTAC discussions during later on in the year. We thought for the longest time it was a one-time award, that's it. We've had years past, quite frankly, where ideas have come up, you know, January, February, March, you know, a great summer event, and we've actually declined helping those out because of the misunderstanding of the fact we couldn't reopen LTAC back up. So, you know, I'm not a firm believer in just sitting on money and not spending it, right? Because we're here to actually, you know, spend that money to benefit the community, not sit on it and bank it. But at the same time, I think having that money in the bank could be advantageous if an idea comes up or if a promotion comes up that could knock it out of the park, and we have that there banked. That's my 2 cents on that. Secondly, I just wanted to point out something I think I saw on the previous slide or so. This was a unanimous decision for this existing list by the LTAC Commission, unanimous, to approve what is being submitted to us. I've commented, I think, several times about how these boards and these commissions made up of these volunteers that we rely upon them to do the deep dive, and I know that hours was spent not only in having discussions about these awards, but in even trying to revamp the system, and there's going to be tweaks, and appreciate your input, Cynthia, on that, right? There's going to be tweaks and changes. There was issues with the previous system, right? There's always going to be that, but I think there was a lot of time put in this, and I think in the 8 years I've sat on council, there's maybe been 2, maybe 3 times that this body has gone against the recommendations of one of our subcommittees. We've certainly sent them back to the drawing board a few times, but to go against a unanimous decision of a committee that spent hours and hours coming up with this list, and there's never going to be it's never going to be a case where everybody feels like they won. So it's never going to happen. The 8 years I've been here, there's always losers in the list, and it's tough decisions. And so my tendency is, unless there's something glowing out there that says that somebody from that committee just totally, absolutely missed something huge, I quite frankly need to have a reason to go against the recommendations of the unanimous vote of a committee that spent hours going through this. And so that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to be very careful with my comments. And Hillary, if I start to say anything I shouldn't, then please correct me. But I'm going to speak just to the Marina Debt Service. We as a council spent a lot of time debating a B&O tax. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out a funding mechanism to take care of what we have just all deemed was one of our best assets, and to, as part of the scenario that we had agreed upon, is contingent upon LTAC funding. And if it's not LTAC funding, then it's increased utility tax. And so, where I agree with Councilmember Wiesner that this committee puts in a lot of time, their priorities sometimes, though, are not the same as our priorities as a council. And our priority, as we have deemed it, was fixing that marina. And so I think it's important that we fund it to the extent that we had talked about funding it. We even added $25,000 to the pot with the idea that that additional $25,000, if we didn't get it through LTAC, again, is utility tax. And so we are looking at either kicking this back or changing this number, or we're looking at implementing utility tax, or we're looking at not fully funding the marina debt project, as we have spent so much time. You know, if we're not going to do that, what was the point of all the B&O tax work that we did, of all the discussion, you know? And so I would just simply encourage my fellow council members to take a look at that and reconsider the need to fully fund that, you know, through LTAC, as we had originally discussed.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Romero. Anybody else? I'm sorry, Councilmember Marshall. I was looking at Councilmember Romero. Councilmember Romero, you're next. Sorry.
Do any of the other council members want to speak?
You're up.
I'm up. Okay. Also, having reflected on the recommendations from the LTAC committee, I echo everything that Councilmember Wiesner and Councilmember Marshall have commented on, but my baseline has been in public service to get an optimal mix that benefits the community widely. And that doesn't mean that there's not times when there's new expenditures, and it does not mean there's times when there needs to be large expenditures in a narrow area. So for that reason, I went through line item by line item, and the council has the recommendations that I have drafted. And as an aside, but an important aside, I want to mention that it's noted that the representative leader for Main Street and the Music Festival have appeared here in person and spoken. Okay, so I'm mindful of their needs, but this particular recommendation is strictly a draft, but it does include the full funding as the council had all agreed upon for the Marina Debt Service, specifically because there was a consensus that utility bills are high enough. They're going higher, and it disproportionately affects people of a certain income level, and that we were not going to do that. And then also of interest, too, was the numbers with regard to the Ren Fair. Now, I mean, I was amazed at the thousands of people that came to Ren Fair. I mean, cars backed up all the way from Swantown Road and 20 all the way to the water on West Beach Road, and people were hiking in a mile to go to this event. So this obviously got tremendous applicability, but their revenue numbers don't look that promising, and there's just this kind of sense of uncertainty about what their future is. They have to have a place, and I'm generally opposed to having LTAC funds being used for events that really don't support our local community. This is a city matter and not a county LTAC. And so if, for instance, Ren Fair was to relocate south of Coopville, I mean, and then we were to approve money, well, you can see where that goes. But I have specifically asked the major hotels, you know, was business big during Ren Fair? And they universally were saying huge. You know, people were dressed up in uniforms, I mean, not uniforms, I'm sorry, costumes for the Renaissance Fair and the like. So, and then also, there's a matter too with regard to those entities that actually have a very strong cash balance, or and that has to be considered as well. So not only the location, but their present cash balance, but I'm not waving off things that have not been done before. I've said emphatically that if we're going to succeed, we have to try new things, and so those people those entities that have not received funding in the past from the LTAC, you know, they should be fairly judged based on that and not based on just the fact that they haven't had any in the past. So for that reason, I'm recommending that we pass this LTAC recommendation back to the commission in order to further evaluate it with regard to a balance and with some more hard numbers, and especially to reestablish the funding for the Marina Debt Service. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Merrow. Hold on, let me just make sure. So we haven't heard from Councilmember Wittgenstein or Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember Stuckey. Do any of you want to speak before I start letting people speak for a second time?
Guess I'm kind of obligated, aren't I? So just to give a couple little thoughts and context, because this will be my 4th year doing this, and we are trying to revamp it a little bit each time. I mean, when we talked about removing the top and bottom score, that was a suggestion I made 3 years ago when someone put a 0. You put 1 0, you've tanked the application. It doesn't matter what the other people put. So that came out from that conversation. So we did a little diving. So this one was tricky. When Councilmember Weiser talks about nobody's happy, well, there was 1 year when we had more grant money than we had applications. And we just said, go for it, and everyone was funded, and it was easy. And yeah, it was a happy year. But we didn't even have half the amount of applications. So we really had a fine-tooth comb. And you got to make sure people aren't playing the game. The game is where most people know is based on a score. So then you go ahead and ask for more than you need, and you realize that the easy way to do it is to put a score in there and assign an amount to that. Everyone that gets 90% or more gets this much. Everyone that gets 80% or more gets this much. Some people play the game by inflating their numbers. Some people are honest and have their numbers what they really should be. So we try to work through that by going through each and every application this time to look at things like Councilmember Marshall was talking about. Is this truly bringing people from 50 miles away? That is all over the material. That's tough. Not is it bringing people from Anacortes, not is it fun things for local people to do, but specifically for this, is it bringing people from 50 miles away? And that's tough. To Oak Harbor. Yeah, that's tough. And we use that based on the data reported, JLARC data, things like that. So this was not easy this time. And no matter what, when you have 14 people, 7 on LTAC, someone here, we're not all going to agree. I mean, we're really not. I mean, I could take this list if it was just me. I don't fully agree with everything on this list. I mean, it was unanimous because, there's always a little give and take, of course. So, I think this is a pretty good job. We didn't know about the Chalk Fest funds when we did this. I don't necessarily have any objection going back. I mean, it's ultimately our decision anyways. But yeah, that's kind of the thought process behind it. If there's specific questions, I'm happy to answer, but it is made up of 7 individuals with different backgrounds. All you have collectors and receivers to give a different perspective. And they're not all going to agree. It says unanimous, but again, it's what do we both like, but not love. So, and always looking for tweaks in the future. We made some tweaks this time with the application. Clearly, we need to make some tweaks next time, but, getting it to the most ideal environment is what we strive for. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for all those, that perspective. And it's interesting how, so many things can be true at the same time. I agree with everything everyone has said, even though some of that stuff conflicts, because I think at the end of the day, the art of what we try to do up here really comes down to compromise. And I am loath to take an advisory board recommendation and send it back. I can count on one hand the number of times I've wanted to do that in the last 15 years. But I do have some questions, some concerns, and it's not even necessarily with the selections of the LTAC committee per se, but the system, tweaking of the system. You're the example about someone being able to tank an application by giving them a 0 score. If we have, like in Cynthia's example about Margaret, if we have a scoring member who can't give a score, then that effectively has the same impact. So it sounds to me like there's definitely some procedural things that need to be reevaluated, I think, for sure. I do think that because of, and I'm bummed out about Chalk Fest, but because of that funding becoming available, I think it would be appropriate to kick this back to the group and say, we've got this extra money that you didn't know that we had, and what do you think about that? I do have some individual concern, like my concern about the Ren Fair not having a firm location yet. Although I would be happy if there was our location will eventually be in Oak Harbor. I'd be okay with that. But if we're going to be funding something and we don't even know if it's going to be in the city, that gives me great hesitation. So I think that there's just a few little things to iron out. I appreciate that there are events on this list that haven't happened and or been funded before. I think everything's happened, it just hasn't been funded by LTAC before, some of them. And it's nice to see and try new things. At the end of the day, this is an account that's specifically set aside to be able to contribute these smaller amounts to community organizations and see what kind of vitality it can bring to the community. So, I don't want to say it's not that serious, but we make some difficult decisions up here, and to me, this isn't necessarily one of the more fun things that we get to do. And so I don't know. Sorry, I just started like 3 different sentences. The $17,000 for Chalk Fest, I don't know how we would approach that. If we were to kick this back to the committee, would it just be with the understanding that that money is now available, or would we need to have like a specific motion about reassigning that $17,000? I'm not entirely sure how we deal with that. And also there was a comment made about the priorities of the LTAC committee or the advisory group, and I might be the only person that thinks this. My peers might disagree with me, and I would love to hear it if they do. But I think that maybe our advisory boards, our committees, their priorities should be the council's priorities. They should reflect those priorities, because that's what happens anytime staff is doing anything, a department head's doing anything, or we're budgeting. We've got, does this align with council priorities? And, that is the bedrock of the decisions that we're making. So I think that needs to be top of mind when any council-appointed board or group is making their recommendation. I think that those priorities should be reflected, if that makes sense. So I guess my first question is, how do we deal with the unspent or unawarded Chalk Fest money? And we'll start from there. David.
All right. Dave Goldman, Finance Director, Deputy City Administrator. The most efficient way to deal with that is to assign dollar amounts to each one of these items, and then make a motion to adopt, make a motion for that list of items with the money attached to each one, and then that goes back to the LTAC committee for 45 days for them to evaluate it, and then send something back to council. And at that time, council can just go ahead and adopt what they sent back tonight. regardless of what input the LTAC committee provides, or the council can take the input and any changes that the LTAC committee makes to it and then adopt those. Otherwise, we might be caught in an endless loop.
Right.
Because if we just send it back to the LTAC saying you have an additional $17,000 and we're not really happy with like certain numbers that are assigned to certain projects, and it goes back to the committee and they make different decisions and then they send it back to council, and if council's still not happy, then it kind of keeps going back and forth.
Sure, that
Yeah,
makes sense. Like,
so-
if we sent it back and said, send us something we like better, but we don't tell them what it is that we would like better, then that's not terribly helpful, is it? Our team meetings. Okay, so I'd be interested in hearing the thoughts from the others. I would want some kind of confirmation or guarantee about the location of the Ren Fair actually being in Oak Harbor. And, that's my concern, and it was brought up, the Marina Debt Service, and even though we did acknowledge during that conversation that we can't, necessarily bank on the fact that it would be awarded LTAC funds, we understood that number was going to be a little squishy. If there is funding available, and I believe there is, then I think that again, that goal, that priority should align with council priorities. So I'm hoping that maybe they would take that bit of guidance. And other than adding in the $17,000 and those are my specific concerns with this actual list. So I would be really interested to hear what everybody else has to say about how we should proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So before I call on anyone to speak again, the two things that I think you guys or Mayor Pro Tem has brought up for consideration and to keep into consideration is the additional $17,000 from the Chalk Fest that's no longer going to be utilized for Chalk Fest, and then the gap in funding. The way the recommendation is right now, we're at about $24,901, and we need another $30,000-ish to cover that. So you're either going to have, yeah. So that's to fully fund it. Again, I'm just laying it all out there. So you're either going to have to know that there's still going to be a gap there, even if you were to say all 17,000 went to the marina. What I'm saying, you're still going to be short, so you're going to have to make some adjustments, or you're just going to know that you're short there. So with that, I will turn it over to Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Marshall and Councilmember Arms. Sounds like what the council would like to see happen is this to go back to the LTAC committee with instructions of trying to figure out how to fund all, if not a bigger majority of the $55,000 marina money. Sounds to me like that's the instructions we would like to give. Because the reality is, and obviously they've heard the concerns about Ren Fair and some of the other things, right? But I personally don't like the idea of just taking the $17,000 and just spreading it out just because we have that windfall. I don't think it accomplishes anything, right? And I do think that if there's going to be tweaking to any of these proposed numbers, I think it needs to be sat down and examined. I don't think it needs to be randomly done by us up here where we're saying, oh, well, we think 10 grand should come off of this one. And, I think that should go back to the committee. And I think in all fairness to the committee, we have to give them somewhat clear direction of what we're expecting to accomplish in what we're sending back to them. And it sounds like that's the bone of contention that we would like to see. We would like to see that the majority of that gap, if not all that gap, fulfilled in that top line at the marina. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I think I'm hearing.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Councilmember Arms, did you still want to speak?
Yeah, and I think you're accurate in saying that, that's what we finally came up to. We knew it was going to be a hard sell. We didn't expect this 17,000. We didn't know it was there. When they did the LTAC, so going back and saying, this is what we need. I know everybody else needs something. I get it. We're kind of in a bind, and I don't know. I mean, we're still short, but I think we can figure out some way to maybe make it up.
Great, thank you. So, really quick. David, can you tell me what we would have left in the LTAC fund balance with just the 475 coming out and the additional 17 roughly?
About 500,000.
Okay, so there is the option to potentially increase what you're allotting to give out this year too. I'm just saying there is still money there. So, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Great comments, everybody. And as I've said before, the marina is a financial hole that we're going to be stuck with for decades, and our grandkids are going to be stuck with it. They're going to have to figure it out. I'm sorry, I'm not real happy about the marina.
What you really think.
So that's just my two pieces on that. I'm going to say it. So if we fund it, you fund it. You know where I stand on that. I'm one person, so it's not going to slow down that process or end it. But I am going to voice it a little bit because I'm not the only person that thinks that way. That said, the Ren Fair, if the hotels were packed that weekend, anything North Whidbey, we should be supporting if it's going to be on the north end of the island. Personally, if it moves down to the middle of the island, I still think we support it. We're the largest hotel area on the island anyway, so we're going to get the benefit of wherever this Ren Fair is held on the island, no matter what. So I like seeing us support that and continue to support that. I say send it back, but give that explicit directions that you guys want for the marina debt ceiling, even though I don't really care. And the rough draft that is presented by Commissioner Merrill, or Councilmember Merrill, see, former name, sorry, I apologize, isn't a bad recommendation at all either. So I think it's well worth them getting the copy of this as they take a look at it to go back. And so I'd make a motion to send it back to LTAC. Actually, I'll make a motion to send it back to LTAC. I can do this. It can be seconded or not. This is an example and the directions that you guys have been suggesting about the marina debt ceiling service, as well as the other areas, making sure we're supporting those institutions that have been a huge support in bringing revenue and people into our community to stay and hang out and have a good time. So, motion made.
So is your motion to support the alternate recommendation?
My motion is to send it back to the LTAC committee with the information so they can make their own determination again and come back to us with what these folks have been trying to get to include. So,
and if the recommendation comes back and the council doesn't agree with the recommendation?
then we don't agree with it. I mean, that's just how it works.
No. There's a 45-day mandatory.
So if it comes back and we accept it no matter what.
There's a 45-day mandatory requirement.
Okay, that's
so
fine.
the way it works is the LTAC committee comes and says, this is what we recommend per project. And the council can go ahead and accept it, or they can say, no, we want to change some of the numbers, we don't like it. They send it back. Then they come back with a different set of numbers and they bring it back to council. If council wants to change those numbers or doesn't agree with exactly what they send, then it goes back and there's a mandatory 45 days.
Yeah,
So
I'm aware of that.
So all I'm saying is if we actually choose dollar amounts per project tonight and send those exact dollar amounts that the council recommends to the LTAC committee, they can review it, they can make comments on it, but that ends up becoming what ends up being in effect regardless of what the LTAC committee comments are for the next 45 days. It's just a mandatory, almost like waiting period where we have to bring it back to LTAC. So I'm just trying to avoid a situation where they
That doesn't mean they have to follow the recommendation. They can come back with a different recommendation than what we send to them.
Eventually, the council will have to approve it, though, and it'll have to be approved what they send over. If the council changes anything or doesn't want whatever they send over, then there's like another waiting period.
And if I could just also note that if there's any of the awards that you do agree with, you could move to adopt those by amending the resolution and then send the rest of them back and go that route.
Seems very messy. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, There's a motion on the floor,
There
and
is.
so we need a second, so
It doesn't
my,
have to have a second, it could die.
it could die.
Yeah.
So is there a second?
I'll second it.
second it, yeah.
Oh, no, you second. Well, actually.
Just for discussion.
Rock, paper,
purposes.
scissors.
Yeah, no, go right ahead, you
I
second.
was gonna say, I have a question that, we
I'll
need to
second
deal with
it.
the motion on the floor, because I have a question that's not
Yeah.
related to the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to take the adjusted numbers as presented, send them back to the LTAC committee with instructions to accept those numbers as well as allocate this additional $17,000 that is now available from Chalkfest. It was seconded by Councilmember Marrow. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. What is, if we can accept some or none or all, what is, and it sounds to me like the hang up is the marina debt service. What is stopping council from adopting the recommendation and adding that surplus $17,000 to the marina debt fund? Do we have to even send it back to LTAC, or can we just do that?
You would have to send it back to LTAC. The one that you're changing with the 17,000.
Yeah.
We could approve all of them, send the city marina fund back,
And we also have the option of
and tell them to figure out how to fund it.
of increasing the overall award amount, because there is a fund balance, there's more money in the LTAC fund to play with, but council said you can only award the 425 or whatever, 475, or whatever it is. So, okay, I want to be clear on what exactly it is we're sending back and why, and what the most efficient way to do this is. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the committee spent hours, or like Jim said, the committee spent hours working out these numbers, and I don't necessarily have a problem with any of the proposed numbers, but I would like to provide further funding to the marina debt service. So whatever the most efficient way to do that would be. I don't know how strongly council feels about reworking all of the amounts versus just maybe allocating a little more funding to give them some more flexibility. So we can, yeah, talk
Okay.
amongst ourselves.
Good? Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm done.
Oh, then, okay. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. So, David, if I understand, your recommendation is that we suggest the funding amounts before sending it back, is that correct? Okay.
It would be more efficient that way, but
Understood.
obviously the council's open,
Okay. And then if I'm reading the council guidance correctly, we may award amounts different from the LTAC's recommendation, but only after satisfying the procedural requirements. So what is the procedural requirements how many times does it go back and forth before council says, we're going to award different amounts, and that's just all there is to it?
So if the council was to say hypothetically, they're going to, award $5,000 to like an ice cream social or whatever, right? And the LTAC recommended 2,000, and council's like, no, we want 5,000. And they send that back to LTAC for the mandatory 45-day waiting period. LTAC, can review it, make comments and whatnot, but after 45 days is up, it becomes effective. That is, we have to send it back for the mandatory 45 days. So whatever council decides tonight for dollar amounts, that could be, that could be the end-all be-all, unless, of course, the LTAC makes comments and reviews it, and then council takes that in consideration 45 days from now and says, you know what, maybe we'll go with what they say.
So I'm trying to understand, do we have to take LTAC's recommendations, or can they kick back numbers next time and then council just say, no, we're going to do this amount, this amount, this amount, this amount, and that's the end of it?
Unfortunately, it turns into this loop, So if we say LTAC,
There's got to be
go ahead and
something that stops the loop.
go ahead and review this information. We gave you some more flexibility and some direction if you read the proceedings from tonight's meeting, and they go ahead and come back with whatever they come back with and send it to council, and we meet again around 45 days, at least 45 days later, with different numbers, and council's like, we don't like those numbers, then it has to go back to them.
for another 45.
So at
For
what
another
point
45
may
and
we
then we're into like
award?
March. And
This says we may award amount different from the LTAC's recommend, but what it's sounding like from what you're saying is we have to keep kicking it back until LTAC recommends something that we approve.
No, LTAC does not have to approve what the council approves. Council could basically just go ahead tonight and say, this is what we want. We have to wait 45 days. I mean, we do have to refer it back to them, but they don't really have any authority anymore. I mean, they're an advisory council.
Correct.
They're advisory committee or whatever it is. So if the council says, no, we want to do these amounts on these projects, then we just have to, wait the 45 days and then council can go ahead and adopt it.
So what you're saying is essentially whatever you guys are going to propose with adjustments, it's going to go back to the committee. It's going to wait the 45 days, and those are going to be what is awarded.
Yeah, I mean, we may have to bring it back for final approval, but yes, we have to wait the 45 days.
So theoretically, we could take what Councilmember Romero has proposed here, add that $17,000. They can take that $17,000 and allocate it however they want with this. But that proposal that he has here fully funds the Marina debt service. And that has been identified as a council priority. And Mayor Pro Tem, I'm the one that said that LTAC committee's priorities are different because a lot of the receivers are the ones that are getting the awards. And so having listened to the discussion, there was at least one member who didn't see any value in funding the marina. And so that had to have been a discussion, and it was kind of held their nose to get up to the $24,000, but they're not necessarily adhering to what council priorities are. Yeah, it's that, and that's how, they're voting based upon what their level of interest is, and so that would be one way that I would. And again, I'm not going to vote on this, obviously, because I'm going to recuse myself, but but so Councilman Romero has kind of come up with some numbers and that we could add that $17,000 to, and then LTAC can decide how they want to add that.
So Councilmember Stuckey and then Councilmember Wiesner.
Couple thoughts. The council hat. Yeah, I think we should put that money towards the marina. I think that the marina should be funded that, and I really, really, really hate the idea of raising utility tax. I mean, this is what lodging tax is for. LTAC hat. Yeah, I mean, Councilmember Marshall did hit the nail on the head there, that it is a bit of a push with that committee. I mean, it's the only committee you have a built-in conflict of interest. Like required by the RCWs to have a conflict of interest. It's very, very weird. And Councilmember Marshall is right in that debt service, I mean, it took a push to get to that even. I mean, if you look at their scores towards the bottom, one person did put a 0. Once that 0 was eliminated, it bumped it up, but it wasn't in the top 5, So if we're thinking, what's easiest, I think to give the LTAC a little bit of latitude, I think this, and I hate to use a strong word, is pretty disrespectful to have it that much. I mean, I see about 3 on here that we agreed on, but let's move $100 from here. Let's move $500 from here. I mean, it's one thing to give an overall goal, hey, we'd like to see this. It's a completely another to take the nitty-gritty we got into and then put our own nitty-gritty into it to do that. I don't think using this recommendation is the way to go. Maybe if this was presented at the beginning when LTAC first started, that'd be one thing, but to do it now just seems like, hey, thanks for the work. We don't like any of that. Let's move it around. Regarding the Ren Fair, I do agree wherever it's held. I mean, we have approved, with the exception of this year, because LTAC didn't approve it, we've approved Meerkat Gardens the last 3 years. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that, and we changed the scoring to be more Oak Harbor focused, where you get less points if you're out too far away, but they sold 12,000 tickets. If that 12,000 tickets, I'm not saying those are all off-islanders, but let's even say 5,000, they're all in Langley. We're still getting a piece of that pie in our hotels. And I don't want to speak for them, but there's good indications that their next event will still be in Oak Harbor in 2026. But that's what they're going to have to speak to. So I do think that the LTAC should have a little different priorities, only because, no offense to the city, I have seen some applications come through that were just, in years past, not 50 miles plus friendly. And if the priority should be the same, then the LTAC should always take 100% for every city grant and say, yep, let's do it. Yep, there's got to be a little bit of push back. So I'm for letting this motion die. I'm for sending it back to LTAC. I'm for even suggesting that $17,000 goes toward the marina. No guarantee it'll happen, because there were some strong opinions that didn't believe it should go towards the marina. But we can kind of send it back with a suggestion, but I don't think it should be line by line, this, that, and the other thing. I think that's a little disrespectful of the time put in by the committee to go each thing and switch it around.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. So I just want to add two things before I call on you guys. I sat through, I think, all the meetings this time, and watched them decipher through the information. And one thing that I would like to point out and just make a recommendation to Councilmember Stuckey for the people on his commission is, these folks really need to be paying attention to the financial statements that these entities are submitting, because if you look at the numbers, there are two of them that make absolutely no sense, and I wouldn't give them anything based upon their financial statements. So, and they're both getting money on this list of recommendations for awards. So I know that's my background, and I know that's my strength, and that may not be everyone's strength, but everyone should be doing their due diligence and looking at that when they're giving away money like this. And there are two entities that would get nothing from me if I were making this recommendation. So, yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
To that point, I don't know which entities you're referring to, but to that point, that is a process that I think can be fixed. If that were part of the scoring process, or if we were a little more explicit about that. I do agree. I appreciate the time that Councilmember Marrow put into coming up with an alternative plan. But I do agree with Councilmember Stuckey. What's the point of having a committee to find numbers for us if we say, hi committee, these are the numbers we want you to bring us? I mean, what's the point? They come up with the numbers, they give them to us, we like them or we don't. But telling them what they are going to be recommending to us defeats the purpose entirely. So I wouldn't want to micromanage to this extent. So I wouldn't be supporting the motion to send this recommendation back to LTAC, but I would support some action about sending it back and then talking to them about the marina debt service. But when it comes to kind of nickel and diming and micromanaging, I mean, it's like I said, it's not that serious. If we do fund something and it ends up not being the thing that we wanted it to be or something, then it doesn't get funded next year. I mean, we keep fine tuning that scoring to make the results align with what it is that we have in mind for this fund. It's not the end of the world if something doesn't go through that's not ideal necessarily. It's not ideal, but it's not the end of the world either. So I'm willing to give the committee some flexibility there. There does need to be some pushback. I mean, that's why we have them. All of our ideas are not necessarily brilliant ones. And so it's good to have that other perspective. Thanks.
Yes, Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. So, unless we're going to sit down and go through each of these one by one, score them, come up with some sort of a system, we're never going to agree, right? So here's what I'm hearing. At this point, it sounds like it's a no-brainer that everybody here wants to see that $17,000 put in use. Sounds like we have a majority that wants to see the $55,000 fully funded from the marina. So I guess I would ask Councilmember Stuckey, was the committee's concern about setting $55,000 aside for the marina annually, was their concern that amount of money going to the marina each year, or was their concern was, hey, this is all the budget we have, and this is how things scored out, and this is how it came in priorities, right? I mean, because the reality is, what we're talking about is committing a multi-year amount here. Let's make sure we're clear with that. We're committing a multi-year amount. Because unless Councilmember Stuckey said that they were just absolutely against earmarking that amount of money each year moving forward, the reality is we're talking about $13,000 here, right? We're talking $13,099.50 is what we would need to come up with in this year's LTAC budget in order to send just the marina debt service back to the LTAC committee and approve everything else on this list, right? Because otherwise, based upon what I'm hearing here, it sounds like we would be sending this entire list back to the LTAC committee for them to figure out where to shave $13,000 amongst these 11 participants, right? You know, which I got to tell you, we've blown $13,000 on more important, and it's in the budget and it's sitting there, right? So in my mind, and I know we have a motion on the floor, and then there were discussions, so I'm not going to make a motion, but in my mind, it sounds like what we need to be sending back to the LTAC committee is the Oak Harbor Marina debt service with a request of the LTAC committee of how to fully fund that. And we as a council have to be prepared to give the LTAC committee the money it's going to take to fund that. If we're not willing to give the LTAC committee an extra $13,000 to fully fund that, then yes, we send this entire package back to them, and they've got to go through here and shave $13,000, $500 here, $500 there. Seems like an awful lot of work and waste of time when the money is there and in the budget and designed and utilized to promote tourism in our community. It's not going to promote tourism sitting in our bank account. So that's what it sounds to me like the most logical solution is.
Well, we have one more person that wants to, yes, Councilmember Romero.
So I regret that there was a perception of disrespect, but of course, there was never any intention about disrespect, but it simply was a draft because I was under the understanding that it could not be considered by sent back to the LTAC committee unless a proposal was submitted. And so these were just general, it was a general proposal. It was never even wildly my intention to have, ironclad numbers. So yeah, put that matter to rest. And so I'm completely adaptable and flexible, but I just think that there were weaknesses in the original proposal from the LTAC committee that needed to be addressed, and this was a way to do it. That's all I have.
Councilmember Wittgenstein, did you have your hand up? Okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have it seconded, we've now heard lots of discussion. Is there any more discussion before I call for a vote? Oh, yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
The only thing I would say, like I said, I apologize for the harsh words, but when I go into it, I have in my mind, before I even have the LTAC meeting, what I think the dollar amount should be at. And I'm always interested to see it shaped by the other score. So it is very easy to say, I think this is what it should be, because I came into these LTAC meetings thinking, I've got this. And my list was not too dissimilar from yours. And then when I see all the other scores, you can't just say, this is my list. You got to say, okay, let's take everybody's and come up with something equitable, which can be tricky. So that's all.
Oh, yeah. The motion was, okay, yes, Julie, thank you.
It was so clearly stated.
I know, Mayor, yes, it was so clearly stated. I appreciate that so much. We do have, I just want to point out, my phone, but we do have a form in all of your drawers that is intended for when you wish to make a motion that is other than a recommended motion. So that can be very clear.
I didn't even know that.
Just randomly say so moved and then
Taking the motion. And so, Councilmember Wittgenstein's original motion. And that was to send back to the LTAC committee to review with Councilmember Mero's proposal so that they could make their own determination.
Thank you.
And that was seconded.
So now, is there any further discussion before I call for a vote? All right, hearing none. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? And one abstention. So we have 5 opposed, 1 for, and 1 abstention. So
if there was a motion, would that motion be sending it back or sending back just the debt service with the knowledge of it's $17,000?
you need to send it back with the $17,000 and an additional $14,000.
Right, we can approve the items. We can approve everything but the one.
Yeah.
And send that back with the extra funding, right?
But you need the $17,000 for Chalkfest, and you need an additional $14,000 to cover the $55,000 of debt service. So, Councilmember Wiesner.
I move that we approve all of the Lodging Tax Committee's recommendations with the exception of the Marina debt service. We send that back to the Advisory Committee with a recommendation to fully fund that debt service, and we allocate an additional $14,000 to the 2025 or 2026 Lodging Tax Committee's budget.
Strongly second.
Okay, Julie, do you need me to restate that motion?
I did write it down.
The motion, please correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Wiesner, motion was to approve all the LTAC recommendations with the exception of the Marina debt service, to send that item back to the committee with a recommendation to fully fund that item and to allocate the additional funding to do so.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, so the motion as presented by Councilmember Wiesner, seconded by Councilmember Romero, is there any further discussion? All right. Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
2 thoughts. One, I'm just going to throw out there. If anyone has any comments to piggyback, great. Otherwise, going to let go. Is that equitable to everyone else who applied? I'm just saying, is it equitable? Because had we known that there was that fund that could have gone to other applicants, maybe we would have changed it. Now, I'm still saying council has the final say, but is it equitable? The second thing in this process, and this is a me thing, I have to be very clear of the time frame of which this grant is. Because originally, my fault, I was under the impression it was a 3-year. Because a lot of the applications said 3-year. I mean, I look at Main Street. Main Street said, right on the application that was on our website, a 3-year application. Now, yes, we can change the time frame, and this is what's being asked to do, but I don't know if that was clear with the original grant applications. So I just need to make sure when we talk about it at LTAC, this is for, was it 20 or 25 years?
The life of the debt service, which is envisioned to be 20 years.
Okay, because I think we were under the impression I was, and I certainly stated such, that it was going to be 3 years. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do 3 years, but I'm thinking of making it fair for everybody, not just what council wants. That's all.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Thanks. I guess my comment back to that is, my tendency were to be, if we weren't putting that $17,000 back in here to attempt to fully fund the Marina debt, that I would just hold it over for next year, right? So I think it is equitable. The money would, in my mind, I wouldn't be sending the money back into the pool, sending you back to the table to reallocate money to redistribute the $17,000, and it would be under the same principle of just a waste of an enormous amount of time and assets, that just like the $13,000, right? We're coming up with, right? And so in my mind, it's equitable in the fact that that money wouldn't necessarily be going back into the pool and being redistributed anyhow.
With the additional.
the additional $13,000 that we're putting in the pool, well, we're putting that money in there specifically to fund that service. Again, that wouldn't have been money made available to the rest of this group. That's just mine. I do appreciate the thought on being equitable, but that's my thought on it.
So just for clarity and transparency, it's 14,000, not 13,000. That's how we get to 55,000, just because I'm an accountant. All right, any further discussion on that? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would remind council that we've already increased the limit by $25,000 from the original proposal for the debt service. So now we're throwing more money at it, but we had initially done 25,000 with that in mind, so.
All right, anything else for the good of the order before I call for a vote? All right, all in favor of the motion and the second as presented, raise your right hand. We have 6-4 and 1 abstention, so I think we got there, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations. All right, at this time,
Thank you, Wendy and David.
thank you, Wendy, yes. Per RCW 4230-140, we have update on union negotiations. This will be a closed session and they are not open to the public. Correct.
Yes. Pardon me? You want?
Logging off, guys, unless you need me.
Yeah, it is closed, but Hillary, quick question.
Do we need
So
Hillary?
they're going to go into closed
Hillary-
session. Can they simply end the meeting now, or do they have to come back out? They
You
can
don't
end the
have to come
meeting
back
now.
out after a closed session.
Okay, so Mayor, you may end the meeting now.
I'm so sorry.
Hillary,
All right,
Hillary, you need to stay on.
Okay, I will.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Hillary. So really quickly, I'm trying to corral cats. There being no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we have a motion, seconded. All in favor, raise your right hand.
James, raise your hand.
James, raise your hand.
We're adjourning our meeting.
Okay, we are adjourned.